Hello everyone and welcome back to another weekly reading update. I can't believe the end of the year is almost upon us. Christmas is just around the corner and the new year is approaching fast. Now this was one of those weeks where I didn't finish anything, but I still feel really good about my reading because I made a lot of progress in a couple of long ongoing reads. And both of them are at an interesting point in their story. Now, I spent a good portion of this week reading the third quarter of The Two Towers, and this is the point where the book really started to slow down for me, unfortunately. And it's one of the things people often say about Tolkien, that the pacing can feel really slow, especially if you're used to more modern fantasy. And while I don't think that's entirely unfair, I think this section does show exactly why Tolkien writes the way he does. The story isn't rushing toward a big spectacle, it's building tension more quietly. The second part of this book focuses on different characters entirely, with Frodo and Sam. They don't really decide what to do themselves, but a lot of things are happening to them, and they kind of just go through it, which makes for a different kind of storytelling altogether. And so each part has its own tone, its own sense of movement, and its own stakes. And even when nothing big is happening on the page right now, there's a strong feeling that events are aligning in the background, that choices made here will matter later on. What I do appreciate about this section is how confident the book feels. Tolkien isn't trying to constantly grab your attention. He trusts the world building, the history, and the mood to carry you forward. And once you settle into that rhythm, it becomes very immersive. There's also a growing sense of inevitability, in the sense that the story is moving toward something larger than any single character. And that's something Tolkien does incredibly well. And this part of the book really highlights it. But yeah, next week I plan to finish this book right before Christmas. And alongside Tolkien, I'm now about halfway through A Darkness at Sethanon, which is the final book of the original Driftwood trilogy. This book very much feels like a payoff novel. By this point in the series, Feist doesn't need to spend time explaining the world or reintroducing concepts. The characters are established, the setting is familiar, and the story can focus on the plot almost completely. What I'm enjoying most here is how grounded everything feels. Even when the stakes are high, there's a sense that events are unfolding because of decisions made much earlier in the series. And that gives the story a satisfying sense of going forward. It doesn't feel flashy for the sake of it, it feels earned. The pacing is fairly measured, but there's an undercurrent of tension running through the book. You can tell that things are moving towards a major confrontation, even if the narrative isn't rushing headlong into it yet. And that slow build is working really well for me. I also appreciate how readable this book is. It's easy to pick up and make progress, which is something I value in longer fantasy series. It's not demanding constant attention, but it still rewards you if you're staying engaged. And so far, this feels like a strong conclusion in the making, and I'm curious to see how everything ultimately comes together. And looking ahead, my next read will be Stratagem by Yoshiki Tanaka, which is the fourth book in the Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I've been spacing these books out a bit, and I think that's working well for me. They're dense, political, and they're very idea-driven, so I like giving myself a little distance before diving back in. But that said, I'm really looking forward to returning to that universe. The focus isn't just on battles, but on strategy and the long-term consequences of leadership and ambition. With Stratagem, I'm expecting more of that escalation, more maneuvering behind the scenes, more shifting power dynamics, and a deeper look at how the larger conflict is changing. So yeah, looking forward to that one. And as for channel updates, last week I did a video on my most disappointing books I read this year, which sparked a lot of discussion. But yeah, I kept it to 5 only because I didn't want to focus on the negatives too much. And a few people were worried if I had a disappointing reading year altogether, which isn't the case at all. So I'm going to make a video on my favorite reads this year as well. So look out for that one. But next week's video will be my January TBR video. I usually never did TBR videos, but I did a few TBR themed videos, and I really enjoyed making them. And another reason is that lately I've realized I like structure in my reading. Also, I have to plan a little ahead because of getting certain books at a certain time from the library. So all of this together just made me decide to do TBR videos. And so I made a small list of books I plan to read in January. And that video is coming next week around Christmas. Yeah, so that's it for this week's update. Rest for me to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I hope you all have a wonderful time in whatever form you may celebrate it. And as always, let me know in the comments what you've been reading this week, and I hope to see you again in the next week, which will be the last weekly update of this year. So yeah, until then.